Hello and welcome again to investingsuccess.ca in another of our short video installments in which we take a look at human emotion, the financial markets, and astrological events. In this video, we're going to take a look at a topic that I introduced to my readers in my second book, The Lost Science, and that is the notion that cycles of the larger outer planets, such as Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus, can be correlated to events here on planet Earth. In Canada, the Toronto Stock Exchange can trace its history back to its very first date of business, which was the 25th of October, 1861. The horoscope that you're looking at on your screen in front of you is the planetary placements at October 25th, 1861. And the one observation that jumps off the screen at me very quickly is the fact that Jupiter and Saturn are side by side in the sign of Virgo. And when I see these two major planets being side by side in a horoscope chart, be it for a stock exchange or a stock or even a person, I tend to get quite excited because those two planets have got some very powerful synodic periods. And it was in fact W.D. Gann back in his day who popularized these synodic cycles, and he used them very widely in a lot of his trading, and reportedly made a lot of money simply by following these longer degree cycles. Now, the synodic cycle between Jupiter and Saturn takes around about 20 years to evolve. And so what I did is I went back to 1861, and using my software that I use, it's called SolarFire Gold, I instructed the software program to give me some more insight into the time frames since 1861, when Jupiter and Saturn came together in the horoscopes. And the software was able to generate those dates for me. Now, I don't have a lot of old historical charts for the Toronto Stock Exchange, but what I was able to figure out is that a Jupiter Saturn cycle started in the latter part of 1980, and it went right through until the middle part of 2000 before it came to an end. Look what happened in the year 2000. The TSX, along with other markets around the globe, hit their crest, and we went into a period of decline. And so to see, since 1861, to see a number of these cycles repetitively unfold, and to have one come to an end right at the significant peak of the Toronto Stock Exchange in 2000 is pretty remarkable. And so now, if I extend out the next cycle, we know that it's going to come to an end in around about 2020 or thereabouts. But we can see that we've already passed the midpoint of that cycle, and in fact, in 2011, that midpoint did in fact align to an intermediate little high on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So I've got a lot of faith in the Jupiter-Saturn cycle when it comes to the Toronto Stock Exchange. Now, one more cyclical entity to take a look at is the behavior of Saturn in and of itself. We're not talking any synodic periods with any other planets or anything fancy like that. If you go back to 1861, when the TSX was formed, we know that Saturn was at 18 degrees of Virgo. And so then what you have to ask yourself is, when are the times since then when Saturn has advanced 60 degrees in the zodiac wheel? And obviously there's a goodly number of dates since 1861, but in more recent time, I'm going to give you a few that have caught my attention. September 1987, and we all know that in October 87, the markets, certainly in Canada and in fact in North America, had quite a severe pullback. August 2002, and we know that certainly here in Canada, in October of 2002, like literally a couple months later, the markets reached a very significant bottom. March of 2009, Saturn had completed one of its 60-degree advances, and of course we all know that in March of 2009 the markets reached a very significant bottom. Now, Saturn is going to be making its next 60-degree increment late in 2016. So keep an eye on late 2016. Are we going to be perhaps experiencing a significant low, or contrary to that, will we perhaps be experiencing a significant high in the markets? So late 2016, keep an eye on Saturn and see what happens to the markets at that point. And I'm going to leave you now with one final synodic pair to look at, and that is Jupiter and Uranus. And in the natal chart in 1861, you can see that Jupiter and Uranus are 90 degrees square to one another. And in fact, the Jupiter-Uranus cycle is one that W.D. Gann put a lot of credence in back in his day. And so, from 1861, using the SolarFar Gold software, I was able to determine those points in time when Jupiter and Uranus had made 90-degree aspects to one another. And if I look at a chart of the TSX, we know that late 1986, there was one of these Jupiter Saturn 90-degree hard aspects, and that was followed a handful of months later by the crash of 87. In mid-1993, we know that there was another one of these events, and markets didn't really crash a handful of months later in 94, but they certainly drifted sideways to down for a good period. We know that there was another of these hard aspects early in 2000. And of course, we all know what happened to the markets in the latter part of the year 2000. There was a hard correction to the downside. There was another one of these square aspects early in 2007. And of course, we know that in the months that followed that, markets reached their peak on the TSX and in other jurisdictions around the world as well. But the TSX was, certainly hard hit following that as it corrected to the downside. Now, we've just made another one of these hard aspects in January 2014. So, here's the question. Will history repeat itself? Will we, in the next several months, see some sort of an inflection point on the Toronto Stock Exchange? The economic data coming out of Canada says that our economy might be slowing. The market arguably is trying to make some sort of a topping formation. I would say be very, very cautious and pay a lot of attention to the fact that we've just made one of these Jupiter-Saturn 90-degree hard aspects. And I will leave it at that for now. Certainly these synodic periods between these major outer planets and the behavior of some of the individual outer planets in and of themselves are fascinating things, and if you can anchor them to a starting point, such as the first trade date for a stock, or for the date of creation of a stock exchange, or for a significant date in global history, and you start projecting forward in various increments, you will see that the frailties of human emotion are such that we tend to encounter repetitive, I don't want to say crises, but repetitive significant events at a number of these increments and intervals going forward. And so thank you for watching, and as always, you can find me at investingsuccess.ca, and you can follow my blogs at astrologicaltrading.wordpress.com.